Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, March 8th, 2026, as we record this new episode. This show starts our 2026 position previews. We are just 17 days away from opening day in Milwaukee, so time to get serious and look at how the White Sox 26-man roster is shaping up and give our thoughts about the position's projections. We'll start with the White Sox infield from first to third base, looking at what Pacoda is projecting, asking ourselves, what does a successful season look like? Ponder if Munetaka Murakami could win Rookie of the Year, if Chase Meidroth will play the most games at second base, can Miguel Vargas hold down third base long-term, and can Colson Montgomery duplicate last year's production? We'll also play over-under for each of the infielders. But first, we have some White Sox news, as manager Will Venable has named Shane Smith his opening day starting pitcher. Here's manager Will Venable explaining his decision on naming Smith as his opening day starter.
We're excited to announce Shane as our opening day starter. He's somebody that obviously from a performance standpoint has put himself in that category of guys we want at the front of our rotation, but also as a teammate and a leader in our clubhouse. He's a guy that sets an example for our group and is really emerging as a leader in the clubhouse. So very excited to have Shane be our opening day starter.
Venable shared the growth that he's seen from Smith, especially this spring training.
I think that up front, you come to this league, especially as a Rule 5 pick, I think a lot of it is figuring yourself out, figuring out how you fit into this league. And he was able to obviously get that information last year. And then once you have that information, it's about, taking the next step and figuring out what that looks like for you and continuing to be consistent and professional. And, he's, on his way to doing those things. And, it starts with, his habits in the weight room and the training room, which he really excels at and has created those, and then just continuing to build the foundation every day.
And finally, Smith is honored to get the ball on opening day and looking forward to face the Milwaukee Brewers.
I took a moment to myself outside and just, I'm super thankful. Your career, you never think it's going to go one way or another. You always think it's always going to be smooth sailing, and I think, just to get that reassurance that that team believes in you and, you want to put a good step forward.
How could the rest of the Chicago White Sox starting rotation shake out? Well, joining me are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And hello, gentlemen. Shane Smith, opening day starter. James, we interviewed him at Sox Fest, and I don't think he really was open to my question about the possibility of him starting on opening day. But alas, it is officially official now. Now that we know that it's Shane Smith in game one, James, how could the rest of the starting rotation shake out for the Chicago White Sox?
Well, my mom is a doctor. I've never actually seen a body reject an organ transplant, but I imagine Shane's reaction to you trying to call him the ace of the staff in January was something akin to that. But not wrong, just early. Suck it, Shane. We showed you your opening day start. This is maybe it's I think it's just the ability to match up a 5-day schedule with looking at a calendar, but it's been kind of apparent that they have been lining up for this once they started kind of starting people in order. So it's very clear that Shane Smith was the start of a block, and then Anthony Kay was second, and then Davis Martin was third. And beyond that, they have obviously the off day in the middle between the opening day and the next two games. So Shane Smith was kind of set up early in spring to start opening day on 5 days of rest, and with the off day, like Kay and Martin would also basically be on one extra day of rest. And then you can kind of go from there. They've already said that Fetty would be in the rotation. I have to admit that I didn't really study where he was starting close enough to know that'd be the 4th or 5th slot, but it's pretty much like you have that as a given, and then it's figuring out who's going to win that other spot. Is it Sean Burke, who kind of seems like probably the best case scenario for how spring shakes out is he wins the job, but obviously we're talking in this moment where this most recent spring start was kind of a blow up. You have Jonathan Cannon, who always seemed like someone they'd be ready to insert in at a moment's notice and feel like I have a pretty idea of what you're going to get, more or less. But then you have, how committed are these side projects of Sean Newcomb getting a chance to start, or any of the other 15 guys in camp with a chance to start at some point. We haven't seen honest to goodness Austin Voth start in spring really at any point. That seemed like more of the depth option. So I would probably lean towards thinking Burke, just because that feels like what they'd want to happen. And with spring the way it is, he only has to look good once or twice before the end to say all right, we figured things out, he's good to go. But that's where I think there's a little limited wiggle room. But I feel like Smith, Kay, Martin has been very firm for a while, and I'm glad. They could have done it while I was there. That would have been fine. But this was pretty road, and it was nice. And Shane seemed to have really appreciated him being a very sincere person who always gives you honest answers about it. So him doing media is always going to be pretty good about this moment, because he'll tell you how much it means to him. So this is all very nice, even if we probably could have guessed it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a tough test for Shane Smith. Again, the Milwaukee Brewers are still projected to be a very strong team in 2026. But Jim, just taking a look at the White Sox schedule and how it starts, it's back-to-back road series. They are in Milwaukee on that Thursday on opening day. It's weird because Milwaukee's got a roof. You could have technically played on Friday, but that day is off for the Chicago White Sox and the Milwaukee Brewers, and they play again on Saturday and Sunday. As James mentioned, Jim, technically, if you wanted to start Shane Smith on a regular 5-day schedule, he can get a couple of starts in, and I think he still is going to get a couple starts in before the home opener the following week against the Toronto Blue Jays. But he could start technically game 1 and game 4 of the season. But is that really necessary? I know we talked about in years past when the 5th starter spot was so uncertain for the White Sox that you would want to have Chris Sale make that second start because you want him to get as many starts as possible because he's one of your best starting pitchers. But with Shane Smith, I'm thinking it's not a bad idea to give him an extra day, right?
Yeah, I mean, nobody of this group, at least of the K. Smith, Martin triumvirate, has thrown 150 innings as a normal starter. So I think just meeting these starts out every 5 days or 6 days, if there's a rest day in between, seems fine. The White Sox don't have the kind of ambitions to where every game counts, or getting to the deadline, being in a wild card spot helps, or they're not facing division rivals to where the head-to-head records really matter. So yeah, use the depth, whether it's Smith and Cannon or Fetty or Voth or anybody else. That's why you have 9-10 starters who look like they're good for it over the course of the season, so you don't have to push Smith into needing a breather come June or July.
If Anthony Kay is the number 2 starter for the Chicago White Sox, again, at least to start the season, he would be the projected home opener starter for the White Sox against the Toronto Blue Jays. So for those that have opening day tickets for the first home opener, that is the projected starter right now that we are going with at Sox Machine, unless things change in the starting front. And we'll be previewing and talking more about the White Sox starting rotation in an upcoming podcast episode. As I mentioned in the intro, this episode starts our 2026 position previews, as we are just really a couple weeks away from opening day and talking about regular season games and that the games now matter. Everything counts. So we're going to follow a similar format for all the position groups. We're going to start with infielders. We're going to take the catchers and pair them with the outfielders. And then we'll talk about the starting pitchers and the bullpen before we make our final predictions of the 2026 season. Also, in our upcoming episodes on the podcast, we'll be talking to reporters around the American League Central, getting an idea of where the Detroit Tigers, Kansas City Royals, Cleveland Guardians, and the Minnesota Twins are at before opening day. Our preview episodes will work like this. I'll be sharing the Pagoda projections from Baseball Prospectus. It's the 50th percentile projection. I'll be asking the question, what does a successful season look like? And feel free to play along at home, in the car, or at work in the comments section of the podcast page on SoxMachine.com. Yay or nay, I'm going to pose a question or a take to Jim and James. They either have to agree or disagree with that take. And then we'll play over-under on a key stat for each of these players. We're going to start with first base. And that, of course, is Munetaka Murakami, who is currently with Team Japan in the World Baseball Classic. Pagoda is projecting in 145 games for Murakami to hit 33 home runs, 77 RBIs, hit .232 with a .347 on base percentage, and slug .481. That is an .828 OPS. And James Fegan, I posed a question to you with Murakami. What does a successful 2026 season look like for him?
Like, I think over 700 OPS, and you kind of get like the idea that he can hang here at least. I don't think that's like shining success in terms of, being a big jolt to the offense, but I think you want to go into year two feeling like, all right, this is a big league bat. Maybe there's some tweaks we can get to these, an asset. Obviously, he probably wants to do a lot better than that. He probably wants to be like, I think for fans to feel like this is like a something that matches the excitement of landing him. It's like something over like 115 WRC plus. That's probably what you need, like, to feel really good. But I think a situation where like this is a hitter you see as viable, you see him have like multiple good stretches in the league, or you start to see like demonstrated strength in some way. You could probably get that if you get over 700 PS. That's probably like heavy slug and lower like batting average or OBP, tilted. But that's where I feel like, all right, this is still your starting first baseman next year, or at least somebody who's prominently in that playing time mix is what you like, something that makes the project feel like you want to go on. And like it's a real like continuing evolving question, like is this like a mainstay, or is this like a annual perennial like starting first baseman in the league? I think that's maybe the threshold he has to defeat, like where if it's like 680 OPS, it's a little bit like all right, we still are under contract for him, but like we probably need to start making other plans about what we're doing for this as soon as like mid-season 2027. I think if you have that level of struggle in it. So I don't want to go crazy for what it is, like as far as like, yeah, we want to extend this guy sort of thing. Like it's probably like in the 120 WRC plus range or something like that. Ideally, you're not overreacting to 2 months of him doing that and giving him an extension mid-June or something like that. But that's just me as someone who attended Notre Dame in the Charlie Weiss era. Type of fear rather than something that you should really worry about.
So if Pagoda is right on the 50th percentile projection at 828 OPS,
it's obviously awesome.
Yeah, okay. So James is kind of lowering the bar on Murakami, but I understand the rationale.
Because of how statistically fabulous he was in Japan, like a projection system is going to naturally be like overly bullish on him in a way that can't really replicate the specific challenge of his transfer over from one league to another that you would get from just a simple like your basic like equivalency projection that you would get from lesser league to higher league. So yeah, if he hits any of his projections, it's great, it's amazing.
I would sign up for these Pagoda projections. If Murakami hit 33 home runs and an 828 OPS, Jim, I would be absolutely thrilled. When was the last time Jose Abreu? I mean, that's the last first baseman that came anywhere close to putting those numbers for the White Sox at that corner. So I want to play yay or nay with you, Jim, for Munetaka Murakami. And I'm looking at this right now, podcast listeners, looking at the DraftKings Sportsbook. They're not sponsoring the show, so don't worry about it. But the reason I mention them, because right now what Vegas is thinking for Rookie of the Year award odds, Murakami's got the 5th best odds right now. Trey Savage at the Toronto Blue Jays has the lowest odds. Kevin McConaughey, we've heard much about him from Jim Callis for the Detroit Tigers. Carter Jensen and Kazuma Okamoto, who I believe also signed with Toronto. So lots of Blue Jays on here. And then you got Murakami at plus 800, which means if you put $10 on Murakami to win the Rookie of the Year, you'll win $80. So he's got the 5th best odds. Jim Margulis, yay or nay, Munetaka Murakami, Rookie of the Year?
I will say nay. Not necessarily because it's a bearish view, although I think the Pagoda projections are pretty abnormal, especially with the combination of home runs, walks, and strikeouts. Like you're running a very fine line when it comes to making the most of his contact to get those kind of projections. And it doesn't seem like he'll be able to do that. So something's got to give, whether the batting average craters or the strikeout rate lowers, and he is able to produce more with his contact because he does change his approach a little bit. But I think given the combination of being somebody who's probably going to strike out a lot and low average and first base, like even if he comes through on the power front, which I think would be plenty useful for the White Sox, I think it's more a matter of you have up the middle players like McGonigal or Carter Jensen, Samuel Basayo, somebody could also factor into this race. And I think, when you factor in positions and the kind of defensive boost you get with wins above replacement, other measurements, and, probably a case where do they consider Murakami a rookie? Like if they could choose a 20-year-old or, somebody like Murakami's got plenty of professional experience, are they going to say like, well, he's not really a rookie compared to the way the others are a rookie? I think there are a lot of factors, large and small, even if it gets to the point of where they start thinking about tiebreakers in which player they'd rather give the vote to, who feels like a more authentic rookie. I think Murakami's got a lot of going against him for this award, but yeah, there's still a lot of ways that he can be a pleasant surprise and a beneficial signing for the White Sox without, having to earn that necessarily.
So no Jose Abreu repeat.
Correct. Because I think just the hitting skill that Abreu had, the bat to ball, I think is something that, if Murakami shows it, great. But I think that's asking a lot from him versus Abreu, where he showed it. It's more a matter of will the power show up. With Murakami, I think it's the opposite of like everybody or nobody questions the power. It's a matter of like, can he, because does the hit tool develop enough against the best pitching in the world to make the most out of lesser contact?
So then let's move over to over-under for Murakami, and it is with home runs. The over-under for Murakami, I'm setting it at 30.5 home runs. James Fegan, are you taking the over or under 30.5 home runs?
I'll say over, just because that seems to be pass fail, somewhere in the middle. That's what his production is going to be oriented at. He clearly hits the ball extremely hard. The question is how much contact he's going to make. I don't think the idea that he'll have very loud contact 35 times over the course of the season is outlandish, but there's obviously some possibility for the bottom to fall out and that to affect his playing time in some way. But it is the time for rampant optimism, and we have to express that through. Yeah, I say that so cheerily, obviously. Sure, yes.
All right, so James has got over. How about you, Jim? Are you taking the over or under 30.5 home runs?
I'll also say over, just because I think he'll get the playing time, and when he gets a hold of one, it might go over the fence at a pretty alarming rate. If you set Joey Gallo as maybe the closest comp in terms of the 3 true outcomes nature of his game and the raw power, Gallo did that 3 times, hitting 30 homers. I'm more interested in if he hits 31 homers, does he hit 9 doubles or something like that, to where it just anything that's hit hard goes over the fence? It's just a matter of he's hitting 203 and everything else is pretty ugly, but the power is fun, and occasionally makes you want them to bring the fiberglass goose back to right field to give him something to hit. I think is going to be more or less maybe not the median outcome, but I think probably the one I'm preparing for, just because the contact issues and the translation between Japan and the US is like both are severe or unknown. So I think even though it's like, not the 50th percentile outcome for Pacoda, I think like I'm kind of preparing for that as like I'm setting the 30th percentile outcome as my 50th and then seeing where he goes from there.
Got it. Okay. So both of you have lowered the bar for Murakami compared to what Baseball Prospectus has for their Pagoda projections. I'm taking the over. I'm pretty optimistic about Murakami. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say he starts this season very similar to the way that Jose Abreu started his rookie season. Like, we could see 8 to 10 home runs from Murakami in the first month, and that just gets everyone hyper excited. Abreu tailed off a little bit because that was the longest season he's ever played. And Murakami, his season has already started in the World Baseball Classic. So I'm expecting at some point the summer slump coming from Murakami, and maybe he slows down in the second half of the season. But I'm taking the over, and he might hit 40 this year, which I think Todd Frazier, right? It was the last one to do that, Jim, 2016.
Sounds right.
Has anyone hit 40 homers since you covered the White Sox, James?
I couldn't get like the opening day outfielders for last season, man, in the Sporkle. I don't know why you're asking me.
But you got that random year with Danny Tartabull.
Danny Tartabull and Tony Phillips. I nailed that.
I'm so proud of you. Let us know what you guys are taking, yay or nay. Murakami Rookie of the Year, over under 30.5 homers. Hit us up on social media or post in the comment section on SoxMachine.com. Over to second base. We're projecting that Chase Meidroth is going to be the starting second baseman. Yes, the door is open technically, but I don't think it's fully ajar for somebody else to beat Chase Meidroth. So we're going with Chase Meidroth as a projected second baseman for the White Sox at opening day. Pacoda projections for Chase Meidroth, 136 games, 11 homers, 50 RBIs for Meidroth, batting .261 with a .345 on base percentage, slugging .371. So Pacoda is projecting a .716 OPS for Chase Meidroth. Jim Margulis, what does a successful season look like for Chase Meidroth in 2026?
I think a successful season would be just getting the starting job, like holding it down, looking like a 2 to 3 win player, and not the kind of 2 to 3 win player who needs to play every single day to get to 2 to 3 wins. That was like the Yolmer Sanchez model or Juan Pierre before him, in terms of like, they look like an average player in terms of wins above replacement, but then you look at the games and plate appearances they accrued, and it wasn't necessarily an average type of performance that was felt on a game-to-game or series-to-series, week-to-week basis. So I think somebody like him, who's going to have probably some time at short, probably, if Sam Antonacci comes up, we'll share some time there, with Antonacci being a complement left-handed, to where, Meidroth should be able to rest if he's banged up, which, I think last year he didn't. Lots of opportunities to move him around. He might be at the top of the order a fair amount, to where like he should get the at-bats. I think, a season where you look at him and say like, he's a starting second baseman. If he's your worst infielder, you're in great shape, I think is kind of the bar I put for him, just because of, he's not going to be somebody who hits 20 homers in a season probably. So you're looking at somebody who, has all the supplemental skills, ability to hit for some average, draw some walks, play good defense, make smart decisions. Manager likes having him around. So I would say if he rounds up to 3 WAR in a well-rounded way, I think that's what you want to see.
Yeah, that would be a great season for Chase Meidroth and at second base for the Chicago White Sox. Again, second base is a pretty weak position across Major League Baseball right now. So if he gets anywhere near that, Chase Meidroth might be contending for top 10 at the position in Major League Baseball. So time to play yay or nay, and this is for James Fegan. James, Chase Meidroth plays the most games at second base for the Chicago White Sox in 2026. Yay or nay?
Um, I don't know if it's like some sort of like historical trauma with White Sox, that like the fans that they haven't seen like depth of the position, that they can't look at like Antonacci and Meidroth and imagine like a pool cue being snapped in between both of them, and they have to fight it out in some way. I don't think it's necessary to think like that. If I would have put a marker for Meidroth having a successful season, I might say like +5 or better DRS or OAA, because those are the crucial element of that is probably his advantage over Antonacci as a player, that doesn't get kind of factored into tweets putting their spring training stat lines next to each other. So I would say yes, certainly, because like he's going to start the season in the majors. That's not a given, or probably even a likelihood for Antonacci, who has not played AAA baseball yet. And I think his defense kind of gives him a staying power, especially at second base. I think he's probably the best second base defender on the roster they have at this point. So I think it's that, and seeing obviously spurts of pretty good offense, pretty good on base skills, very good contact skills. The fact that he's obviously produced very highly at AAA already, and that he was banged up last year. I think you could see the idea of like this guy's second year in the majors, healthier, have optimism for him being like a league average hitter. Yeah, I would lean towards him playing the most games at second base. I think that his metrics there have been really good. I think specifically watching him anecdotally, his actions were a lot more rushed at shortstop, and that's where a lot of his throwing errors came from. I think if he's at second base kind of all the time, and Luis Angel Acuna was like the primary backup shortstop, I think he could look like a stud defensively at second base over the long haul, which I think he should at least have a pretty decent window to start the season to build up a really big lead in that aspect. And even if like it becomes a timeshare down the road, he still is like an asset defensively who commands a fair amount of playing time there because of that.
So James is going with yay. So it's time to move over to over under. And Jim, I'll start with you, and I'm setting the over under. Let's just assume that Chase Meidroth, and James is right, that he gets the most of the starts at second base. I have the over-under set at 124.5 hits for Chase Meidroth in 2026. Are you taking the over or the under, Jim Margulis?
First of all, to go back to the pool cue fight, who wins that?
What's Ares, the god of war? It's like some sort of like offering to him. I think he wins at the end of that.
I think somebody else dies first.
Linane.
The pool.
I think somebody else gets taken out in the periphery as
The
they
person
just
who's
go
dropping
around
the
and
pool
around.
cue then doesn't make it out of the room alive.
They're fighting with toothpicks at the end, going for eyes. That's probably how it works. Yeah, I would say over, under 124.5. I'll say over. I think he should get enough opportunities, and also like the way the lineup's been shaken out, like probably get a lot of plate appearances. Hopefully the lineup turns over more this time around, to where he just comes to the plate more often. The hit tool comes back a little bit as he's healthier, starts putting a little bit more of a charge in the ball. I think he's a little bit more viable as an offensive performer this time around. So yeah, I'll say over.
All right, so Jim's taking over. James, over under 124.5 hits for Chase Meidroth.
How many did he have last year?
114.
Then over. Why not?
All right, James is going over. Back-to-back overs. I'm going to go under. I'm not as optimistic about Meidroth as you two are. I think Meidroth does make the most starts this upcoming year. Let's see if he plays 100 games.
So like a plurality versus a majority.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the under. I think he's going to have to play like 130, 140 games. Like Pagoda's got to have to be pretty close to 136 games for him to be 124.5. But let us know again in the comment section. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the YouTube comments. Are you taking the over or under 124.5 hits for Chase Meidroth in 2026? We're moving over to third base. And our projected starter for the Chicago White Sox at third base in 2026 is Miguel Vargas. Of course, the White Sox signing Murakami and having him play first base. We know that Murakami will get some starts at third. Maybe Lenin Sosa spells some time at third, but we are projecting that Miguel Vargas gets the majority of time at third base this upcoming season after splitting time between first and third last year. Pagoda is projecting 145 games for Miguel Vargas in 2026, hitting 16 home runs, 60 RBIs, batting .231 with a .317 on base percentage, slugging .378. That's a .695 OPS. James Vegan for Miguel Vargas. What does a successful 2026 season look like?
I'd be too boring to just say like average or better defensive metrics. So that's probably like a big part of it as far as like being a long-term plan there. So 20 home runs, that probably represents the sort of power output that's not a crazy ask for him, but probably represents a level of success. I kind of think it's a given he's going to take walks, and I don't know about like make promises. He's not gonna like strike out like 25% of the time unless like his swing breaks down in some major way. It's kind of hard to go like hard under on any of these unless you just think somebody's like season's gonna fall apart, like, or you think this person's like a total fraud. Like even Murakami, like there's obviously bust potential that we all talk about, but it's hard to like the outcomes of that would look so putrid that you could like have a hard time like saying at the start of a podcast, like, oh, he's gonna hit 8 home runs and be phantom IL by June. Like who would pick that? That just seems so dour and like negative. So I think 20 home runs represents like him driving the ball consistently enough, whereas on-base skills are make him like at least like a regular startable player. I don't know if it like makes him a long-term fixture type of season. He could hit 20 home runs and be like a 108 WRC plus guy with like still below average third base metrics, and you're still kind of like, all right, he's still in the mix next year, but we're not necessarily like not thinking about the future of the third base position anymore. It's just Miguel. But I think 20 kind of keeps him, in the game in a significant way as someone who's going to get significant, playing time the season after that. Even if it doesn't like preclude him from like, hey, we have a million shortstops now, so third base is Colson's now or something like that. But it kind of further establishes him as a legit like everyday guy of some stripe, or at least regular. So I'll say that. But the defense does need to be better than last season for him to really like that to be established as his home, as opposed to like, all right, he's a good corner bat that we use in a lot of different ways, and we'll see where his playing time comes from. I think he needs a two front kind of improvement to really like, this is our everyday third baseman for sure going into 2027. But people love dingers. If he hits 20, they'll be happy with him.
Well, that's a great lead into the yay or nay, Jim Margulis, for Miguel Vargas. And yay or nay, Miguel Vargas settles the third base future for the Chicago White Sox with both his bat and glove.
I'm going to say nay. I think it'll probably be more amorphous of just, the couple guys I think of when it comes to like right-handed, third base, first base, bounces back and forth, hits for some power, but not a ton. Seems like he should be able to hit for average, but doesn't necessarily like, and these are references that popped in my head for the archetype is like Casey McGee or Chris Johnson or somebody like that. Wow. In terms of, just random polls, but somebody like bounces around between teams because like teams can find a use for that kind of player who they just need an average bat. Don't need like a sterling defender, aren't going to count on that guy being the like 5 or 6 days a week at that position, but can serve a purpose. I think that's the kind of the model I'm going for in terms of like which number I'm looking at or which statistical category I'm thinking about Vargas. I'm kind of going in a different direction, just wondering how much more average he has in his bat, because if he's somebody who can hit like 260, 270, I don't think anybody's going to like, you can count on 280 anymore, given the way the league is going, and 300 really seems like even more of a pipe dream. But just like 260 plus the on-base skills, plus the occasional power, plus the versatility in the infield. Like, I think that's something that carries in the league for a while. And that's especially with not a whole lot of players hitting 260 or 270 with other skills. That's something keeping the league for a while versus somebody has to hit 20 homers, 25 homers with the defense not being great. When you watch him, like week to week, it seems like he's somebody who doesn't look overmatched at the plate. Seems like he can cover a fair amount of it and can, work the field to where he doesn't need to, take advantage of every single pulled ball in the air to get over the fence. But seems like it's kind of trending that way. And I don't know if it's just like a first full season figuring it out that like that's how he's surviving and that's how he's providing value, but he can evolve further and make more use of his batted ball contact. But that's redundant. But yeah, make more use of his batted balls. I think that's what I'm looking for. I guess the number is like what kind of average can he hit, and how does that manifest itself in terms of keeping the offense moving, driving in himself, but also being able to drive in others if he is somebody hitting, fifth or sixth in his lineup and getting guys on base.
He is clearly like a big leaguer. It's just like it's not really defined like what level yet. And this is his last pre-arb year, and teams are like, especially teams like this one, are more reticent than ever to paying arbitration for guys who don't have like really established everyday essential roles. And even then, they try to find like extensions or ways to not give them annual raises in arbitration. So it's like just a very critical year for him.
When we talked about Munetaka, Murakami, and those projections from Pacoda, an OPS over 800. I think if he nails that, successful year. If Miguel Vargas meets these Pacoda projections, I think in the offseason, we're going to be talking about the White Sox looking for an improvement at third base. Because I did the whole media tour watching Rock Chalowski. You've seen it on our YouTube channel. I was on ESPN 1000 talking about Rock. And everyone's question is, you got Colson Montgomery, Rock Chalowski, and Billy Carlson in the system. How's this infield going to look? And it's like, part of me is like, hold on. Let's see what Miguel does in 2026. What if he makes a big step forward? He's got to do better than what Pacoda is projecting. Like for me, I think a successful season would be a 750 OPS. I don't know, James, about the power, but I do think, to Jim's point, the contact and on base skills, like drawing walks, walking 9% of the time, I think Vargas can reach 750 OPS.
What if Bonnemer reaches and torches AA by
Sure.
the end of next season? That also complicates the picture.
It does, but it's not like our year one for someone like Miguel Vargas is a ton of money, right?
Right, but teams find any reason to shave anything at this point.
No, that is a good point. For listeners and those watching on our YouTube channel, these Pagoda projections for Miguel Vargas, for me, that's not good enough. If those are the actual, how he ends the season with a sub 700 OPS, I think everyone with your offseason plan projects entering the lockout, so you have plenty of time to do them, we're all going to be looking at ways to improve at third base for the White Sox.
Well, playing a lot of major league time and not doing well is not going to do well for your Pagoda projections. So, like, obviously 2024 is weighing heavily on, like,
sure,
even if it doesn't seem super relevant to what kind of player he is now, that's going to, weigh on his, statistical projection profile more heavily than, Murakami, like, having 800 OPS in the MPB in 2024 is probably more worrisome, but it's not going to, like, ding him statistically in these sort of projections the way Vargas struggled in 2024 did.
So then let's set the over-under with an optimistic point of view. And I'm setting it at 70.5 RBIs for Miguel Vargas in 2026, which means I think he is going to surpass what Pagoda is projecting. He's going to be closer to that 750 OPS season line, if not higher. James Fegan, I'll start with you. Are you taking the over or under 70.5 RBIs for Miguel Vargas in 2026?
God, this feels like really pure gambling now because it's RBIs and it's so it's no longer adhering to like a straightforward logic. I want to pick an under because I want to pick an under somewhere, and I want to make this like positive reasons, like the White Sox lineup was deeper, so Vargas isn't necessarily installed in the 3-hole the way he was last season, and he could have like a somewhat like improved season, like maybe 30 OPS points higher, but if he's batting 6th or 7th throughout the year, or gets down there over the course of the season because like other guys are doing great, because like Teal and Caro are like top of the order, middle of the order guys, and he doesn't get to 70. So I want to go under, but in a good way. that makes sense?
Sure. I mean, if he's
I'm trying to
batting
think.
6th or 7th in this lineup, he's not going to have that many opportunities like last year. So I understand.
Like, could the rookie catchers kind of take a bigger role, and that's what, prevents that from happening?
Jim, are you taking the over or under 70.5 RBIs from Miguel Vargas?
Yeah, basically what James said. I was kind of thinking the same thing. I guess the negative slant would be if you have like some all or nothing power hitters in front of him, whether it's Murakami, Montgomery, and they're not getting on base a ton, but they're hitting homers when they make contact. Does that leave just like the bases empty one way or another for when he comes up to the plate and he's more somebody who has to get on base and start something again because it's either he's the first batter of the inning or because fireworks just went off and now they have to start another rally?
I'm going to take the over. I'm thinking like 75 RBIs for Miguel Vargas in 2026. I'm thinking we're going to see the Miguel Vargas offensively that's closer to what all the prospect analysts were projecting when he was part of the Los Angeles Dodgers farm system. I think we get closer to that. Miguel Vargas is a hitter. I'm still uncertain of what the defense brings at third base. I thought Vargas played well defensively over at first base for the White Sox last year, but I totally understand having Murakami be your first baseman and you still want his bat in the lineup. So move Vargas back over to third. I'm thinking at some point you're going to see I don't know if Meidroth's a great leadoff hitter, but I'm thinking Meidroth, Montgomery, Vargas, Murakami. Because Murakami hitting behind Vargas, I think he gets challenged more times than not. So let's do this, Miguel. Let's get to 75 RBIs this season. That will really help the White Sox lineup. So I'm going to take the over. And then our last player that we are going to be previewing in this podcast episode for the infield, taking a look at shortstop Colson Montgomery for the 2026 season. And Bakota, not exactly high on Colson, and I imagine it's because of the mix of what we saw last year in the major leagues, but what we also saw in the minor leagues from Colson Montgomery. Bakota is projecting in 145 games for Colson Montgomery, 20 home runs, 65 RBIs, batting just 216, 290 on base percentage, slugging 385. That is a 675 OPS. And Jim, like we have been doing with the other infielders, I've been asking, what does a successful season look like? I will say this, based on these Bakota projections, I think everyone would agree, White Sox fans and media alike, that would not be a successful season for Colson Montgomery. So let me ask you, what would a successful 2026 season look like for Montgomery?
Yeah, that's correct. I think to use a more, 10,000 foot view of him, I would say you look at him and you say that's a good shortstop. And I think that can take a couple of different shapes. That can be somebody who, hits, 25, 30 homers with a low average and low OBP, but plays a good shortstop. It could be somebody who is more of an average shortstop defensively, or maybe sometimes looks a little awkward, slips into liability here or there, but hits 40 homers and the offense really, evolves further. And you're looking at a, 120 or 130 WRC plus, and he gets to an above average season there. I think you combine those and somehow you're at the Corey Seager projections are coming true. That's he put up 3 wins in half a season last year. So do it again. And that's getting MVP votes at that point. And I think that's probably too much to ask at this stage in his career. And given just the sheer improbability of somebody his size and shape playing a good shortstop and covering the strike zone to where he doesn't strike out in above average amounts. I think it's just a lot to ask. So I think I'm going to go with good shortstop, above average. Feels like everybody looking at him says yeah, that's a starter. That's a plus player in your lineup. White Sox did good here. Which shape that takes, not quite sure.
All right, so then let's play yay or nay, James Fegan. For Colson Montgomery, Jim mentioned it. He was over 3 WAR last year. Yay or nay, Colson Montgomery has another 3+ WAR season in 2026.
I want to say yay because, well, for multiple reasons, it'll be better for our business. But if you take his defensive metrics from last year and say like, all right, this is true talent, and just like project him towards, let's say 130 starts at short, that becomes really not asking too much out of his bat to get there. I feel now for his history, especially with the back issue he's had in the past, 130 game starts at shorts is more than a notion. And also, given what his scouting looks have been or the assessments of him before this past year, maintaining his defensive metrics this season's more than a notion. So it's definitely rosy to say yay. I want to lean towards saying that. But I think fundamentally, if he is that level of defender, and people talk as if he is, at least in Sox camp, then I think he can get there so long as he stays healthy. I'm tempted to be bullish on the offense because like he literally hit another like super long home run today, or day of recording. I have a measure of success / over under to flip on to you, which I might be accused of being too cute here given our own promotional situation, but over under 1.5 Howard Ankin commercials for Colson Montgomery in 2026. I think if he's over 1.5, he's clearly had a successful season.
Yeah. Let's go over. I think he'd be great for Howard Ankin. Let's make it happen. And our friends over at Ankin Law, if you do get a voice recording of Colson Montgomery promoting you guys, send it over. Of course, our Sox Machine subscribers, shameless plug, they don't listen to ads. They get an ad-free version of the show. So if you want that, and you don't want to see or hear Colson Montgomery tell you how great Ankin Law is, you can sign up at soxmachine.com/products. I think when it comes to the whole successful season notion and this yay or nay, if Montgomery has another 3-war season, I think another thing to add on, Jim, like, and I think now that James has mentioned it, it's a thought that just came to mind. Like, I think we need to see at least more than 125 games for Colson Montgomery, because I'm sorry for the sigh, but if the back does bark up and he just disappears for weeks because he's on the IL and there's just so much uncertainty or lack of clarity, well, then I can see this quickly turning in White Sox fandom, Jim, from, well, Luis Roberts not here to be the piñata on the supposedly new star player, but they can't stay on the field. Here's Colson Montgomery. And I'm really hoping that is not the case. So that's why I want to add, like, if he can play more than 125 games in 2026, I think that's another caveat in order to determine if this season is successful for Montgomery.
I guess like the good news is that despite the back and oblique issue that he had, like he played 141 games in 2024 when you factor in Charlotte and Glendale in the Arizona Fall League after. He played, 131 between minors when you factor in the Arizona sabbatical. That's pretty good. So he has shown an ability to post. I think he's shown some. I think part of the questions in his scouting report is, and Keith Law has talked about this when he's joined us, is like he didn't know how much to factor in. Like, was he playing through something, and that's why he wasn't particularly dynamic with the bats and didn't look that looked limited at the plate and looked awkward in the field. I think that's the questions that they had about that. But I think he's shown ability to take the field when he's healthy enough, and I think given the time he missed last year with Arizona, and given that was just entirely approach related and more of a reset versus dealing with an injury, needing time off. I think his size and the fact that it's been in history and just large guys hitting the dirt with regularity does take a toll on the body. So I think it's a real, I think concern's too strong, but just something to keep in, factor into just all of your projections and trying to set expectations. But I'm inclined to think like I want to see it pop up again before I say like 100, more than 130 games is too much. I would think like 140, 145, I think would be a successful season.
Okay. So let's move over to over under for Colson Montgomery. And I'm setting the over under at 27.5 home runs for Colson Montgomery in 2026. Jim, I'll start with you. Are you taking the over or under 27.5 homers for Montgomery?
I'm going to say over. kind of like the Murakami discussion, it's the same thing of just when he gets a hold of one, it's not cheap, and he doesn't need the right park or the right conditions to hit one out. So I think homers might be the easier one of his categories to hit, assuming he's healthy. I think it's more just the strikeout rate, the hit tool, defensive numbers. I think those are the ones that are going to be tougher for him to hit, or at least, tougher to project with certainty. I think Homer is just especially once he switched to the torpedo bats and just seemed to understand where the barrel was going to be on certain pitches, that the power really exploded on him.
So, James Fegan, I pose a question to you. Over under 27.5 homers for Colson Montgomery.
Doing like the Astros prospect list now, and they have like this big raw power, like poor hit tool guy named Luis Baez, who hit 21 home runs as a 20-year-old and then hit 2 this past year. He obviously had injuries and he had approach issues, but like it spoke to like, if these like power over hit profiles break down all the way, they really do break where the power disappears too. So as much as like I'm giving the same answer as Jim of like, this is basically the same calculation except with a lower home run total, so over, I do like, there is obviously like bust potential with these like orientation of hitter, where that's like on the border of like how much contact before like, or how little contact you can make before just like things just break down entirely. I thought Colson was like trending towards the better side of it, certainly like after the torpedo bat. And I think like it's really just kind of a chase issue with him as far as like the big improvement point he needs. And I want to be optimistic about that since he's been so good at that in the past. But I'm saying over, but I'm like acknowledging like this isn't, as much as it feels like a gimme and related to Murakami, I'm just like, nothing's a gimme with anything. Like things happen in baseball. Like these, like when there is risk with his profile, like it doesn't just, it won't be like he's bad at everything else, but he still hits 30 home runs. It also could just be like, it breaks down entirely and he's not playable. And that's why we don't get there. At the same time, over White Sox are winning the pennant, all that.
I'm going to take the over. I'll take it one step further. Colson Montgomery leads the majors in home runs hit by a shortstop. Last year, only 2 shortstops in Major League Baseball hit 30 or more home runs. That was Willie Adames, he had 30, and Francisco Lindor had 31. Montgomery's 21 last year was good for 9th of shortstops in Major League Baseball, tying with Corey Seager in 31 fewer games. So if Colson Montgomery hits more than 27.5 and shortstops pace like last year, that immediately moves him up to like 3rd if he gets to 27. So you could still take the under and he'll be in the top 5 for shortstops. But I'm taking it a step further. I'm going to say Colson Montgomery over 27.5 homers, and he leads shortstops in Major League Baseball with home runs in 2026.
Bobby Witt Jr., you were on notice.
You are definitely on notice, Bobby Witt.
Yeah, I was looking to see, that's what I first Googled to see how many he hit last year, 23. So he had a down year in terms of homers, but everything else still pretty good.
All he needed was a fire
Bobby's
lit underneath him.
Yeah, here you go, Bobby. This is for you. Here comes a 40-40 season from Bobby Witt Jr. now.
He goes 15 for 16 with 10 homers against the White Sox in their opening series in April.
Oh, man. I just remember how he just
45.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another option. Never know with Trevor Story, Dansby Swanson, maybe Ellie De La Cruz figures it out. But I'm still, damn it, I'm going to stay committed.
I like it.
Colson Montgomery.
Stick with it.
Colson Montgomery.
Ellie De La Cruz should get like another homer for this next season for the one he hit off Steven Wilson that is just orbiting the planet now.
It'll come down someday.
Yeah, take out the
But
city.
again, let us know either on the podcast page on SoxMachine.com, on our YouTube channel, what you guys are taking. Over, under 27.5 homers for Colson Montgomery, and then yay or nay, Colson Montgomery has another 3+ WAR season for the White Sox. And that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this 2026 preview. Again, our upcoming previews combine the catchers and the outfielders. We'll take a look at the starting pitchers and also the White Sox bullpen before we make our predictions for the 2026 season. We're going to be having multiple guests coming on the show as well, as we'll be talking to reporters and other sites around the American League Central to get their previews as we inch closer to opening day, starting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for the Chicago White Sox in 2026. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also check out our videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James Fegan at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. We are on Blue Sky at SoxMachine.com. James is jrfegan.soxmachine.com, and I am josh.soxmachine.com. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, sign up to become a subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. Our subscribers get an ad-free version of both the podcast and the website. We have additional tiers of support that give you additional perks. We just had a PO Sox mailbag. So for all of our 10 WAR subscribers, they get to submit questions to us and we answer them. Our 25 WAR and higher supporters as well get to meet with us in a monthly Zoom. We'll be having one of those coming here before opening day to present to them of what's coming up at Sox Machine and also get their feedback as well, especially from our Veterans Committee, which we do have some spots open in our VC. And of course, the Sox Machine Fantasy Baseball Leagues. We already had one draft. If you want to participate in one of our baseball leagues, you have to be a Sox Machine supporter and subscriber. So again, go to soxmachine.com and sign up today. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of soxmachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.